Welcome to today's episode with our special guest, Karolina Sulich, a Fulbright scholar and synthetic biology innovator with ties to MIT. Karolina's unique perspective blends bioethics, synthetic biology, and the influence of biology in user design, offering insights that span from product inspiration to ethical considerations in biotech. Why tune in? Whether you're exploring the ethical landscapes of biotechnology, seeking the connection between user design and biology, or curious about the role of climate biotech, this discussion will inspire you for sure. Karina's extensive background from project management and design to her advocacy for sustainability and responsibility positions her at the intersection of science, technology, and ethics. Prepare for an engaging conversation that explores the impact of synthetic biology on our world, guided by Karina's experiences and expertise in creating innovative solutions for a better future. Welcome to Keep IT Healthy podcast, the show hosted by people making things happen in technology, aiming to optimize healthcare delivery, health, well-being, and fitness. My name is Jan Kamiński and I'm the co-founder of AppLover, a company dedicated to improving the quality of life with IT solutions and digital advisory. We started making this podcast to amplify great thinking to propel healthcare forward. Hi, Carolina. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, hi, Jan. Thanks for having me, and thanks for finally meeting online with you.
Let's start from the end.
From the end, okay.
What is synthetic biology in your opinion, and how do you see the future of that realm, as you call that? And where do you think the greatest potential lies in general?
Mm. So the synthetic biology is like a very interdisciplinary field, which is treating basically biology as an engineering discipline. So synthetic biologists take a living organism, for example, and try to shape or shift this living organism into performing a certain desired functions. For example, producing desired protein that can perform some kind of interesting and useful functions. And it's like a set of there are many different skills that are seek in the world of synthetic biology. So chemical engineering, bioinformatics, definitely data science is also very useful, biochemical engineering, protein engineering, and usually interdisciplinary teams combined with all of this different scientists are working on something together. And I became interested in this field when I was exposed to them. First of all, because of my visit, 4 months visit at George Church Laboratory in 2018. George Church is a very famous genetist. He is one of the people developing CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing technology, and he works at Harvard. So I spent there 4 months having this informal residency with artist scientists working there. His name is Joe Davis, and he actually has the title artist scientist and is part of George Church Lab. And this got me interested in DNA and this word. And then later on, I took part in this online class, which is actually amazing, and anybody can take it. It's called How to Grow Almost Anything. And this is one semester crash course in synthetic biology for people who are from different backgrounds. And the class is led by MIT Media Lab, and it's really 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 interesting. Top scientists are giving lectures, and it creates very interesting community of people who are interested in synthetic biology.
You mentioned an artist scientist.
Yeah.
How does that work?
In terms of Joe, because I guess this is art and science became since he started to work, and he's he works for a long time. So he's been around for 30 years doing art and science. But right now, I think it's being understood very diversely, but how he understands it and what he's doing. So he's being very rigorous in terms of science, but at the same time he's exploring ideas which have more, I would say, poetic value or or experimental. And one of the things that he was exploring that now is being investigating and discussed, and he was one of the first people who had this idea, was encoding information other than biological into the DNA.
Okay.
So his like very famous work, like from the early 90s, is, yeah, it's called microvenus, and basically he encoded the image inside the DNA.
Okay, interesting. But I want to talk about those ideas of synthetic biology because probably it deals a lot with bioethics because in general you interfere with nature and with your experience in that field in bioethics, how do you ensure that the projects are aligned with the ethical standards, or maybe are there any in a sense, are there any ethical standards there, especially when you just mentioned venturing into new frontiers, let's say of biotech or exploring something completely extraordinary?
Yeah, I guess like that's a very tricky area, and in the past there have been like history of violations of bioethics, like for example in terms of like working with humans and getting humans like into experiments but not like revealing exactly what they are part of, like that. It happened in the history of science. So like if you're working with humans, it's very important to like have the consent of humans participating. But also if you're working with environment, which is much more tricky because it's sometimes hard to predict what could be consequences of, for example, releasing any genetic modified, let's say, microorganisms. Like estimating the risks and figuring out if there is no potential harm there, it's really important. So it has to be like consent of the community, and definitely like a very good assessment of like the impact that you have on the environment, or like the place if you're like working outside of the research lab. And it's somewhat right now related to the work of my lab and the project that I'm involved in. So I'm involved in the project which is working with Gowanus Canal. This is a super fun site, meaning it has high toxicity and it's like very polluted site in New York. And it's been widely investigated. But what my team is focusing on, we are focusing on microbes that are able to break down heavy metals in this environment. So right now we are looking for the right candidate, the right metal, and the right microbe and the right protein to see if we can like figure out like the way to bioremediate. But for example, there are solutions that have been implemented and they have been successful of bioremediation through organisms like existing in real life organisms dealing with toxic waste. There are two sites, one in like Germany and one in Netherlands, that have been treated this way. And the researchers were considering later on using to another like toxic compound genetically modified microbes. It didn't like happen, and they didn't apply it, but there were like conversations between them and the, let's say, biosafety board or like biosafety concerned people, if this like released changed microbes wouldn't harm environment. So like their claim was like it wouldn't, because they're treating the man-made toxic compound which doesn't exist in nature, and this particular microbe will only address this compound, so it wouldn't like make any harm, like they can. But it's like there can be some mutations or something.
But on the other hand, it's not a controlled environment in a sense. You actually bring
Exactly.
someone into the pond, right? I mean, the mice
Yes.
into the pond.
Yeah, exactly. If you're like releasing something into the nature, then it like becomes more tricky.
Do you know any? Because, of course, the recent quarrel would be around Neuralink and Elon Musk's implants that probably might be considered not by or might be a problem in terms of bioethics. But out of your experience, you mentioned one case. But do you know any other specific instances where for example, a scientist had to consider, let's say, the ethical implication, or maybe another project you were involved in?
I remember there was like this art project, art like biology project. Like one of the artists made genetically modified fish and released it into the pond, and it was like a huge thing. I don't remember his name, unfortunately, but I think it's really easy to Google him. And in every single project, there is like in every lab or most of the labs, there is ethicist, bioethic person, like having in check the scientists not to like go too wild in their like urge to experiment and like test stuff.
And those people, those, let's say, bioethics people, I mean, at universities and companies, can they actually block something, or it's rather a consultation kind of?
No, they can like it depends where, but they are, yeah, they can like block stuff if they feel like it's unethical. Like you have to have like several like permissions, but I'm not a specialist in the process. I was like studying bioethics at Warsaw University, and this program was more focusing on doctor patient relations. So like I came to the to study there because I was more interested in what we are talking about now, but the program itself was more focused on like doctor prerogatives and like relationship with the patient and how to make like it work and be consensual. Yeah, so I took only one year of like this program.
What role, in your opinion, biology plays in user experience and user interface design? How can biology inform the design process, or influence that, in a sense? How, for example, how can synthetic biology be used to improve the user experience? Do you have a take on that?
So like this is like a funny question because I was thinking a little bit about it, and definitely like the user experience, how to, for example, grasp a focus or how to make something more readable. There is like like whole biological system that we are that like is, for example, more prone to like focus on like follow some kind of like user experience pathways. But in terms of synthetic biology, I was interested in the origin of this question because I'm not sure if the ask is how we can like modify ourselves to like, I don't know, like be more compatible with the current interfaces, or like what is the question here, like in general, attention and some kind of like, and I think it's more like more biology, but like more like neurobiology, like neuroscience, psychology too. Like I think these disciplines are more applicable like and interesting for people working with user UX and UI. And I have some glimpse into that, but I wouldn't say I was like actively like pursuing this like for a long period of time. But I think interesting is the quest or like some kind of a dream to build fully biological computers, and it's right now not implemented, but it's being considered and it's being discussed. So, for example, in terms of like memory storage, like you could store data in the DNA. And I mentioned Joe Davis, he implemented this idea in the early 90s, and right now, like people are picking up. And why it's so interesting is that DNA is like, first of all, like extremely stable. And the secondly, You can like store a lot of information in a very like small space, so it's like very potent, like. So this could be interesting. And then like if you have like fully biological like computers, like how that could like interact with, I don't know, with our biology, like maybe this can be like more sensing towards a certain um, volatile organic compounds that our body is releasing, and like bees have some kind of like sensors, so be more in tune, the user experience which is more in tune in with your current state, for example, of mind. And like if you're nervous, like it shifts toward like different like experience for you, and so on. So be more interactive, like I can imagine something like that. But that would require some kind of a sensory which enables to read what is happening with you. So either some kind of patch or like some kind of like pump that sucks the air and analyzes what's happening with you, and helps you like to focus more or to relax more, or like,
I'm
yes,
sure you're
some.
also discussing this on the academic level. Let's say, I mean, given you also mentioned a few of those, let's say, advancements. So, given the rapid advancements in biotech in general, where do you see the industry is heading in the, let's say, next 5 to 10 years? Or
In terms of like stuff related more to human health, I see I see like the more development in gene therapies, and more personalized in general, like going towards more personalized medicine. So I think that's something that's going to happen. Also probably like the advancement in like AI, machine learning, will enable to test and see like and lower the cost of like testing different therapeutic molecules, right? So like this is going to also happen. But I'm personally very much excited about the climate biotechnology, which is starting to emerge out of the, of course, like current climate crisis needs. And there are more and more investment opportunities for people starting companies, at least here United States, and trying to, for example, address carbon capturing, or different kind of like ways of like dealing with many pollution problems on the more planetary scale. So I think this is something that will happen, and it is tricky because it takes time to see the difference. And also, as we spoke, the matter of ethics here, like, so like trying to really understand the impact of these changes is very important. But there are like several organizations with, I think, like exquisite scientists on board that like are driving this movement, or like the new industry that is like emerging. So I think this is really something that will happen in the next 5-10 years, that we will see more companies dealing with mitigating climate crisis through biotechnology.
this is interesting. And like, what do you mean by climate biotech? Like, what kind? If you can, someone completely out of the industry, what would be the example of solutions in that area?
Yeah, so for example, you could have like um, genetically modified microbes that are like better in capturing carbon, for example, and then keeping the carbon in the ground, or like modified algae that are like better in like also working with carbon, or like modified plants that are more potent in terms of like taking CO2 from the atmosphere and revealing oxygen, and then storing the carbon in their roots. And so like this kind of like strategies, because like plants, they're like in general like the photosynthetic pathway has this, for example, like the glitch inside, and it could be more potent. Like, so it could like you're losing like around like I think 15 or 20% of like the oxygen that you could produce because of the malfunction in the system. So like some of the people are trying or working like towards like tweaking photosynthesis to be more potent. So there are like many kind of like ways to address that. And environmental biotech, I would say also like the work of my research group is under that. So for example, looking for a ways to bioremediate, like cleaning like the contaminated soil or water, but at the same time you could like use microbes for mining, and so like do biomining, and this is ecologically it's like less harmful than fracking, and like, you know, so that could be something that is also some kind of like the technology that is being investigated.
Yeah, 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 okay. I get the concept.
So in but basically using like different existing systems like bio-based systems like microbes or plants or like, you know, algae, and tweaking them to better perform the stuff that they are doing, or altering them, changing something in their genetic code that enables performing a certain action. Like, I'm focusing on this bioremediation thing because right now I'm on this in this topic. So, but also like you could produce stuff like, so manufacture stuff in a more less heavy for the environment way, and it's not like, you know, per se, it's not like, for example, sequestering more carbon from the air, or like, you know, like the acidification of the oceans. It's not like, you know, working towards like this direction, because the ocean's acidity that is rising is also like problematic for climate. But figuring out better ways to manufacture things, and like looking for like different materials, this is also something where synthetic biology plays role, and in general like biology and biomanufacturing is important. It's not like at the moment like some of these solutions are not very scalable yet.
They're not, or they are?
They're not, for because like it takes time for like let's say like there is like company based in New York, Tomtex, and they I think started in 2020, so they're pretty new, and they are producing the leather, but out of mushrooms and out of like shells, like of different like, you know, lobsters and like sea animals. So, but for example, you know, mushrooms, they have like their cycle of growth, and like in general biology has this like time scale, growth scale, like something needs to grow and then it can be like used for something else. So like this is like uh, so it's not like mass scale, but they entered like the luxury like market. So they, I know that they worked with some designers, and the interest in this kind of materials is growing. There's another like very interesting studio from Slovakia working with experimental materials with bioplastics, and they are called crafting plastics. They're like from Bratislava, but they're also like looking for, let's say, more synthetic biology altered materials, like material which could, like, for example, which has a sensors and change the colors because of like this biosensor is embedded in the material, and when exposed to UV light it changes colors. But this was the project, like this is one of their project that I think they showed during Milan Design Week. But at the same time, this could also like be, for example, elevated and shifted more towards this being sensitive to, let's say, pollutants. So like it can, like the material can inform air pollution or like interact with the environment to let us like immediately know that something is off.
Right.
So coming back to your question, it all like it's still like it's like more environmentally conscious manufacturing of a lot of things that we produce so much stuff right now, and some of this stuff that we are producing has like very short life span, and then it's being a burden, like so like figuring out what to do with the waste, and it's also like super important.
I see that you've been a Fulbright scholar and you have also been involved with the MIT Media Lab. How have these experiences shaped your perspective on the synthetic biology and in general?
Like this program that I mentioned before, how to grow almost anything, it's basically like totally shaped my perspective. And being then involved as a teaching assistant, like the year after I finished the program, was also extremely beneficial in terms of like content. I think it's like amazing content, and it's amazing that it's accessible online without like any fee. You can like sign up to these classes, and like I think it's amazing. So like there is like a huge like selection of subjects that you are exposed to, from like genetic modification, like genetic engineering, to like different applications and different like biological like systems that have been developed. So you have all of that. And in terms of like working experience, this is like a very well organized environment with a very strong leadership, which is very inspiring. So like the way how I later on worked as project manager definitely was affected by the projects that I was supporting in MIT Media Lab. Very effective, very fast paced, very goal oriented, and super interesting and smart people. It was, yeah, super inspirational, but also like I learned a lot. I learned a lot.
Okay, and you kind of refer to that because you have experience both in academia, NGOs, and also private businesses. And how does the project management approach differs between all of these environments, and how did you adapt it to each?
I think like that on the like in terms of project management, it's like the goal is very simple. Like you are, and everywhere is like it's the same. You want to deliver something, some kind of like a end thing. It might be a project for a client, a software, or like implementation of like some kind of system, or it can be like conference, or like managing a community, or like concluding the one semester class. So there's like as kind like an end goal like everywhere. Like in terms of research, maybe it's less defined, but still like you want to like find, for example, like the right metal, like so there is like a goal, and then you need to like figure out what steps are needed to be taken to execute this goal, like in the like best way, so like the least cost, and like
Yeah.
in terms of time, and like what team do you need. It's like very similar in all of these areas in a way, and that's why I think this is like such a well that it's a skill that is easy to transfer from one environment to other. Maybe like there is like a different, maybe the speed is different. I would say that industry is like faster, and the speed is faster, and the deadlines are shorter, and there is less time to like think deeply about stuff. Just like execute and error, try, error, go. And right now my experience being back in academia is like the speed is slower, which is like in a way nicer, but also there are like some deadlines, like deadlines and obligations. So if you want to continue research, you need to have like funding secured, and to have a funding you need to have results from your like previous research. So there's also like some kind of a cycle, which is like had longer maybe intervals, but there is a cycle that you need to be aware of to be successful in researching something.
And how do you stay updated with the latest developments? And we cover a lot of topics from biotech to design and PM, but like the latest developments in biotech would be really interesting. How do you stay up to date?
So I read a lot of like different science news, like they're like Science Now, or like I look what's happening in Nature and like all of this scientific literature. Also, I follow interesting people on LinkedIn. Definitely, if you're interested in learning more about science, there are like tons of like free resources on EDX or Coursera. Like EDX have like a lot of like MIT prepared materials to learn, and they were like really really good. But also, if you're like interested and want to dive deeper and like be engaged in the community, I would recommend joining the Global Community Bio Summit or taking How to Grow Almost Anything class. Both of them are super super inspiring and can like open like interesting views to you. So definitely that. Yeah, and read a lot. Like this is like read a lot. Definitely read a lot.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing your experience as well. It was really great to host you today. And the last but not least, where can the audience find you? Are you on LinkedIn, Twitter? Where you're active?
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not super active, but I try to be active, and I definitely respond to messages. And if you are in New York, just like you can like reach out and we can get coffee. So maybe Jan, you will be in New York.
Most definitely soon. But Karina, thank you again for sharing everything, and I hope to stay in touch.
Thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
Stay in touch with us. Subscribe to our podcast, give us a like, comment, or share. If you want to reach out personally, you can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram.